Morning everyone, how are we? So we have got to a point where we're about to start plonking some bits of engine back together, so I want to get a coat of paint on the timing cover, because on the Tuscan, once this is in the car, you can't get the timing cover off, I don't think, or certainly not very easily. What we're going to do, I'm just clean all the corrosion off. I'm going to take this little housing off. We'll leave that seal in, so that'll protect the metal surface. Then we'll just swap the seal out. Hopefully. Right, there we are. I'll just sand that little obtrusion down. So that's the front seal bit. Actually, yeah, you do need to take it off to actually change the seal. So I'm going to say, we'll leave that in, that'll look after that. I won't bother masking that up, I'll just clean the paint off a bit afterwards. I'm going to use a collection of bobs and bits, wire brushes, just to clean all that corrosion off. We'll get a coat of edge primer on it. There we are. I said I wouldn't bore you whilst cleaning, but well, I thought we could just have a chat, you know. It's very boring, it's quite fun talking to a camera. What I use is that in a bottle. No, it's not actually Rain-X, obviously. I'm going to scrape it all off and clean it. But that's boring. What's your dream car? You old school? Is it any type? It must be the archetypal dream car, mustn't it? The E-Type. And quite rightly too. Designed by some of the greatest British engineers who ever lived. William Lyons, Walter Hassan, who was one of the team who did the XK6, the XK engine. Developed during the Blitz, actually. They weren't allowed to work on car engines at that point, but William Lyons was allowed to have Firewatch set up at his factory. And he decided his chief fire watchmen, fire marshals, whatever, would also be his engineering team. And they worked away in the middle of the night. And there was being home warnings for bombs. And obviously this was in Coventry, which was utterly flattened by the Luftwaffe. Thanks for that. Out of it came that wonderful XK engine, which obviously first saw service in the XK120. So yeah, is it any type? Archetypal dream car, I think. This is mine. This is my E-Type. Really. And you could draw parallels, couldn't you? 2-seat, Tourer, British design through and through. Was it Oliver Winterbottom who penned it, I think? I know he did TVRs, I can't remember whether he did the Tuscan or not. So, engine designed in the UK. I'm going to do a separate little thing on the Speed 6 because I haven't really read up on it. I know Al Melling has something to do with it, but I don't. I seem to remember there being a story of some subterfuge of the original designers designing it and then the guys at TVR changing enough of it so they didn't have to pay them for something. That might not be true. I'm sure there's loads of videos already on Speed 6, but yeah, I thought we could do another one. Might be interesting. Oh, this stuff's a bitch to clean up. Why the Tuscan? Which was like why TVR? I think what's interesting in this in the automotive space are stories. Top trumps is fine. It's all when you're in school and you go, you know, my dad's speedo, my dad's Maestro speedo used to go up to whatever. Yeah, so that clearly made it better than someone else's dad's Astra, didn't it? Because if it had 100 miles an hour on the speedo, surely it could get there. We were sweet, weren't we? Naive. So we don't need to drink if you use this stuff. Anyway, where are we? YTVI, it's all about stories, not top trumps for me. I just think the company has such a fantastic story. It always just seems to be owned by, I hate to say it, it's the archetypal British underdog, isn't it? It's always owned by someone seemingly without really enough money. Always going bust. But somehow in that, producing wonderful cars. 1947, TVR started with Trevor Wilkinson. Not a very inventive man as far as names, because he just lost some out of his first name. Trevor, TVR, yeah. Though he was very quickly bought out, and he ended up in this weird situation. So he basically, the company was sold on, he was bought, his shares were bought out. After building his first few, I believe TVR number 2 is at the Lakeland Motor Museum. Very Lotus 7-esque component car. Very much another one of these little manufacturers that took advantage of British taxation system, where they avoided purchase tax, I think it was, if the car had a certain amount or certain components installed at home. Very much how Lotus and many others came about. So, example of a good bit of legislation, really, because it made people think on their feet. Anyway, whatever. So we started the company doing these little component cars. TVR number 1 I don't think exists anymore, but certainly TVR number 2 does at the Lakeland Motor Museum. And really from that point, it was always sports cars. Now the brand never went to do something else, never decided we were going to make some stupid crossover. Well, these days, some crossover. And those days, whether you go into a more luxurious car. But no, TVR is always sports cars. But the TVR story does differ slightly from that of, I think the most obvious one is probably Lotus. Just people know more about Lotus. And there's always the assumption that these little startups were always down to one man of incredible genius. Lotus, Graham Chapman, Sir John Cooper, William Lyons, Jaguar. Well, of course you can spread it out, can't you? Austin, Leonard Lord, William Morris, the Roots brothers, I think they were, the Roots group, a la Hillmans and stuff. You always had, in most British stories, you had sort of one set of names. It didn't work like that with TVR. Quite quickly, Trevor was either bought out or he wanted out. Check the book again, really, but other people took over the business. He ended up still doing things with TVR though, because he was the owner of a company called Grantura Engineering, who still made the bodies. Grantura, yeah. Some of you probably know that name. That was an early sports car. They weren't always, what else do we go through? They weren't always big engine brutes. TVR's most popular time, easily, the 90s, Peter Wheeler's time. Mark and Lily sort of into Peter Wheeler. They weren't always big engine. In fact, all that early time, they used things like MGA engines, MGB. Oh, what else was it? There's some Ford engines in there. The first one, I think, he said recognisable today. I'm always going to go back to the boom in the 90s. And equally, you could say towards the end of the 80s and 80s, 90s with the wedges. Yeah, like the 400S, 350, 390, 400 SEs. But for me, the first recognisable TVR would have been the Griffith. Not the 90s one. Which I think was a Grantura, which an American chap, Mike Griffith? No. Jack Griffith probably did an AC Cobra. He took a little British sports car, little lightweight, well set up British sports car, and mated it to a big American V8. In this case, it was a small block Ford, I think 4.6. You know, you see those rakes at Goodwood today. Very popular cars. Very, very good cars. And that, in my mind, is the first recognisable TVR, because obviously, you know, a bit like your favourite Bond. So, you know, my favourite pigeons. You've heard the one about your favourite Bond. It's the one you grew up with, isn't it? And also, I think, yeah, TVR is the same. It's the TVR you grew up with. Which, being a 90s child, would be a Chimera, Griffith, which I wasn't really into cars then. I liked Volvo Estates because Dad had one. But then it was the T cars, and sorry if you don't like Top Gear, but it was Top Gear. I never understood when people went, oh, Top Gear is the reason for the demise of the British motor industry. They always took the piss, which was rubbish, because they were always so nice, I believe, about British cars. Yeah, they took the piss out of Rover 75s and, you know, whatever. But generally, you know, you look at their reviews of T350s, Tuscans, Cigaris, obviously Hammond loves Morgans. I don't think many of the proper reviews are of Morgans, but the ZT260, incredibly happy with it. The mental supercar, that MG X-Power thing, which started life as a Cube Almain Gusta. Again, extremely positive about that. And if there, if there was, I imagine every car to not be positive about, it was probably that one. I wonder what on earth a company in that state were doing making a supercar. But anyway, I'm digressing. So, Top Gear's fault, but from the first time, the very first time I ever saw a Tuscan, I was just transfixed by the shape. It's as stunning now as it was the day it came out. That lovely, it's traditional, yet forward thinking at the same time, isn't it? Long front, sort of backspace cab, short rear overhang. It's not a sort of camtail, is it? Sort of cut. I'm looking at it in the background. That sort of chopped off tail. It is as quintessentially English in a shape as you can get to a Austin Healey 3 litre or whatever else. Gordon, well, no, maybe not a Gordon Keeble, but and yet it was just such a good design because it still looked modern. Yeah. It still looked modern, and I still think it would look modern today. I'm not as much of a fan as the Tuscan 2. I really, I don't know, I just think it diluted it a bit, really. I didn't like all the appendages sticking out of it and the wings, and this is a very pure shape. This looks, again, I'll draw conclusions to the E-Type because I think this looks as if it's come off of the designer's paper. It's not come off the designer's paper and then gone through a load of engineering meetings. There's that road test, again Top Gear, did of when the XK was facelifted. Or not facelifted, when the new XK came out in 2006, 7, 8, whatever it was, something like that. And they're pointing at little things like this stupidly long antenna and the funny little boot spoiler done for X regulation, and this doesn't have anything. It doesn't look like there's anything attached to it. Obviously the fiberglass, the way it's been built out of fiberglass really helps with that. The things like, I'll tell you what, rather than just bleat on. Oi. The way the door rolls down, you can't see the sill. It's one less shut line, and it just cleans up the side of it. No door handles. I mean, that's normal today, isn't it? With the silly pop-out ones. This has got it, the classic button. You know, the famous thing of, was it a Tuscan 2 or a Cigaris on Top Gear when they got getting people from a factory nearby on Dunsfold to try and open it, not telling them how to do it. The wheels are as classic as it gets. I hate the little indicators. I'd like to find something else, but and then just love it. Flushed in lights. The fact they come from a military Land Rover, but it doesn't matter, does it? It only needs to be clever. The indicator pods in the back of a Mark 1. These days, an oft-used phrase is, "Oh, it looks like a concept car." But these days, everything looks like a concept car because the concept cars just look like how when the car comes out. But back in 2000, that's not how they came out. I mean, I don't know if you remember when the Evoque came out. My God, they were never going to make that. It looks amazing. When the design proposal for that came out, design proposal, not Pratt. When the concept came for the Evoque, I mean, Land Rover never going to make that. They made all sorts of concepts that looked a bit like it, and then the Evoque came out. Because cars didn't look like the concept cars back then. But from that point forward, these days they all sort of look like that. So, you know, looking like a concept car today is neither here nor there. But when this came out, and from little TVR, not from Porsche, not from whoever else, not from Jaguar, from little TVR in Blackpool, who built cars in a load of sheds that were glued together. That condition. And again, I know it's such a horrible English cliche, isn't it? But you know, the plucky little, don't lose that, plucky little company knocking out something like that. Stunning. Yeah, that's why I love it. I love the story behind it. I love the way, in the Chimera manual, the first thing that's in the front of it, and I think the Tuscans are the same, and Cerbers and all sorts, a note from Peter Wheeler about not driving like a dick. It's a very torque-rich, what was it? It's something along the lines of this being a torque-rich motor car. We advise you follow the old racing adage of slow in, fast out. You wouldn't get that in a BMW, are you? It's fantastic. Ugh. How brilliant's that? Companies like TVR, Morgan, all the component of Westfield, Ultima, Ariel, all these little companies can make such fantastic vehicles. And whilst it is a cliche, sod it. It doesn't matter because it is something that we are known for in this country, just producing fantastic vehicles out of, well, not out of very large factories. And when we get to the very large factories, we tend to need to get someone else to own the company for it to do well, but we'll gloss over that bit. So that's why this is my dream car. Oh, hi. Nice to see you. Should we cover it all up? What have we done? We have not done too much, really. We checked the condition of the coolant pump, changed the O-ring, checked the condition of the oil pump, changed the O-ring, checked the condition of the scavenger pump, changed the O-rings and seals, because they were all happy. Tensioned that. Well, you don't really tension that, you just check it, and it's fine. 10 mil of play on both. The faces of all of the guide blocks. And the half-time bearing. Now in the centre of the photo is the half-time bearing itself, where all those chains join up. Half-time because it spins at half the speed of the crankshaft. And what we did there was just check for any movement, fore and aft, up and down, all of that. And then just looked at it physically, make sure there was no scoring, pitting, anything like that. So now, this is our freshly painted timing cover. So we've gooped it up. We changed a couple of seals as well. And made a mess. Okay. There's a seal on oh, where is it? There's an O-ring on that you want to change as well before you put this on. We also have a couple of dowels. Get over. Ow! I didn't bring a mallet. The paint isn't very interesting. As I've said before, we're not all about prettiness, we're about things working here. So. Right. But it is actually lacquered, so none of this should cause any issues with it. Seals, there's one in there, there's no ring there, and then the seal on that one goes on from outside. Which I think we're going to pop on now because I think I'm going to forget. Okay. Now, there's a few different size bolts. We've got some very long ones, which they all had sealant all over it, and I might regret this. but none of them are through holes. So why do they particularly need goof all over them? What do you reckon? Should we be putting it on? Or I don't know now. I might have misplaced a couple of bolts as well, but we can find those, it's fine. These get torqued up to not 30, about 25 Newton meters. I will actually just say about just a moment on the torques. The vast majority of torque from this engine seem to be not far off your bog standard one. So there is a chart. If you look for it, it will give you torque numbers for bolts, depending on the thread, obviously depending on the size, the strength, and whether they're fine or coarse thread. And so far, we're not onto, timing related stuff or things like that. TVR just follow that. I say TVR, most companies just follow that. So if you can't find a torque setting, just use that chart. Right, we've just about got contact everywhere now. I need to find those 4 bolts. They're probably with the cam cover. Well, what did we talk about? We talked about doing a leak down test, but I was warned slightly about that. Now, you've probably all seen people, or done, maybe you've done it yourself and been terrified, doing compression tests on engines that haven't run in a while, because what you'll get is an artificially low reading, because none of the sealing surfaces have got hot in so long, they don't seal, and that is completely normal and fine. Now, we don't know how long this engine's run for, or we don't know how long this engine hasn't run for. So the numbers could be bad. Well, I think the numbers will be bad, obviously, because it's been sat. Equally, do I think it'll detonate? No, I don't. I'm going along this whole build. I want to try and do it from a point of view that you don't have to. We might have to still spend loads of money, but you don't necessarily have to spend loads of money. You can find out if things are wrong and not spend loads of money just on the off chance, because it's not the end of the world to take an engine in and out. So that's what we're going to do. That's what I've decided, rightly or wrongly. We're going to put it in. I might be going over myself, but it's just, I might have already said this even, but that's just the way it is when you have someone that has to work in between doing work on their cars. We're going to put it all in, and we're just going to see how it goes, We'll see how it runs. Well, hopefully it will run. Then we can get it warm, and we can see what we actually end up with. So we're missing a few bolts, but what's a few bolts between friends, eh? There we go. Now, sorry about that, interweb. It's well, I live in an area where everyone likes to chat, which is very nice, but not so good for filming stuff. So I've buttoned it up. There is a very little that's interesting about it. We will just go over it though. So top tensioner, this one, that is basically, this chain has no slack, so you get that nut most of the way on. It was O-ring, little flat washer, then the big thick washer, and then you get a spanner on there and a spanner on there, and you just apply force. So you're holding that, you imagine counterclockwise, and you're holding that timing chain there, sort of at tension, and then nip the lock nut off. That's an oval nut, so no torque setting or Loctite on that one. This one, turn it all the way until you're tensioned, let go, and then go one full bolt hole backwards. And to do that, you can actually remove that nut, and you can spin this plate round, and that'll give you half a hole either way. And then simply pop that in with a bit of Loctite, and that's that one. That's just a seal. There's nothing. It's not a pulley, is it? Crank balancer. This one, I greased it all up, popped it on. I started it off with a hammer and a piece of wood, drew it on with the bolt, took the bolt back off. Then you apply silicone to the back of this large washer and torque that up to 125 pound-feet. Then the other thing we've done is pop the top on. Nothing very interesting there. I put the ignition coil back on, don't know whether it works. I think if that's a date, it'd be 37th week of 2005. But anyway, I just feels a hole in it. And that was it with the engine. I need the space. Basically, I really need the space back because I've got some other jobs that really need doing. So once we're back in, we'll swap the thermostat. I'll just put a new one in it. Attach things, change belts on that. It's all pretty straightforward anyway. We can also put the starter back on when we get there. But come this way for the next bit.